Hello, everyone. We will wait just one more minute and let the rest of the participants trickle in, and then we'll go ahead and get started here shortly. Oopsies. Okay, I think maybe we will go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I am Ariella Sella, a Senior Sustainability Advisor at Pure Strategies. Thank you so much for joining us in today's session, which is focused on the really important topic of packaging sustainability. Specifically, we'll be discussing Stonyfield's journey to improve the environmental footprint of its yogurt pouch packaging. A few quick housekeeping items before we begin. If you have any questions throughout the session, we encourage you to enter them through the Q&A field. We aim to cover as many as we can after our presentation today. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website at purestrategies.com. Before we dive in, I'd love to provide a brief overview of Pure Strategies for those who may be less familiar with us and our work. Pure Strategies is a sustainability consulting firm and certified B Corporation. For over 27 years, we've been helping our clients at various stages of their sustainability journeys. We help companies build and implement sustainability programs that drive strategy and goal and target setting across key areas such as climate, regenerative agriculture, packaging, nature, and sustainable chemistry. This includes creating programs from the ground up, as well as diving really deeply into product and packaging sustainability, as well as supply chain sustainability. In addition to myself, we are joined today by two sustainability leaders from Stonyfield Organic, who were involved at various stages and in different capacities in this pouch packaging work. Bridget Pichette is the Vice President of Quality and Corporate Social Responsibility at Lactalis US Yogurt, which includes the brands Stonyfield and Siggy's. Bridget has over 3 decades of experience working with FDA-regulated operations, with a focus on managing engineering, manufacturing, and quality teams in both the biotech and yogurt industries. She also serves on the Food Safety Committee of IDFA, or the International Dairy Foods Association. We are also joined by Britt Lundgren, the Senior Director of Sustainability and Government Affairs at Lactalis USA. Britt has 2 decades of experience working to advance agricultural and industrial sustainability through policy and supply chain initiatives in both the nonprofit and business sectors. She serves on the boards of the Organic Trade Association, the Sustainable Food Lab, the New Hampshire Conservation Law Foundation, and co-chairs the board for the Northeast Organic Family Farm Partnership. As I mentioned, today we will be discussing how Stonyfield has worked to improve the environmental sustainability of its pouch packaging. We will first start by talking about Stonyfield's long history of environmental stewardship and responsible business practices. We'll then get into some of the drivers for sustainable packaging work at Stonyfield. We'll then delve into how Stonyfield arrived at its approach for improving pouch packaging, discussing technical challenges and lessons learned, as well as what some future work might look like. We will also highlight what resources Stony has made available for others to learn from their pouch sustainability journey. And then finally, we'll end our session with a question and answer period. Again, feel free to write any questions that come up in the Q&A field during the session, and we will try to answer as many as possible. With that, I will pass it off to Britt.
Thanks, Ariella, and thanks so much to everyone for joining us here today. We can head straight into the next slide, Ariella. I'm going to start by just sharing a little bit of Stonyfield's history on our commitment to sustainability. Stonyfield actually got its start back in 1983 on a little farm just west of where I'm sitting over in Wilton, New Hampshire. And Gary Hirschberg and Samuel Kamen were running an organic farming school, and they were trying to find a way to bring in some additional income for that school because, not surprisingly, running an organic farming school doesn't generate much in the way of cash flow. And Samuel was fermenting various things in the farmhouse kitchen, and they decided that maybe yogurt had some commercial potential. So Stonyfield was born out of that initiative, but really at the core of their effort was this question of, can business be a force for good? Can it be a way to advance a mission and make the world more sustainable? And those questions and that mission have really continued to guide Stonyfield over 4 decades later in how we run and grow our business. Next slide. So this is a really condensed timeline of some of our sustainability initiatives and successes over the years. And over this time, we have pioneered many sustainable business practices that have since become commonplace. So you can see many highlights here, but I'll just touch on a few. One is that we were the first US manufacturer to offset our greenhouse gas emissions from manufacturing. And we did this back in 1997 when really no one had any idea what offsets even were. We collaborated with the Union of Concerned Scientists at the time to do this, and then we worked with them to write a guide for how other businesses could also offset their emissions. We were the first yogurt manufacturer to do away with plastic lids on our single-serve cups, and we switched to foil, which reduced the materials and the weight of our packaging. And as time has gone on, we've adopted several third-party verification systems that validate our efforts on sustainability. Most importantly, all of our products became certified organic back in 2007, and we really view this as foundational to our sustainability commitment because of the number of farms that we can support that don't use toxic pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. Today, we are also a certified B Corporation. We have a science-based target, and we're working closely with the farmers in our supply chain to provide them with the tools, knowledge, and financial support to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide, Ariella. Our science-based target guides our efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from all aspects of our business. Our target is set as a 42% absolute reduction for scopes 1 and 2 and a 30.3% reduction of scope 3 emissions by 2030. We're proud to have achieved 100% renewable electricity at our Londonderry, New Hampshire plant, which is our main manufacturing facility. And we did that back in 2022. And we're now working hard to find ways that we can decarbonize scope 1 in that facility to reduce natural gas usage. As I mentioned earlier, we have several initiatives underway with our direct supply producers to help them reduce emissions, and we're deeply engaged in research to understand how those farms can also increase the amount of carbon they sequester in the soil. And of course, packaging emissions are a critical piece of our scope 3 footprint, and we'll talk a lot more about that as we go. Next slide. And next slide. Research shows that consumers are increasingly demanding more eco-friendly products that reduce their carbon footprint and conserve natural resources. So shifting to more sustainable packaging by increasing recycled content, advancing recyclability, lightweighting components, reducing plastic, and innovating on reusability can all help us as a company improve brand loyalty and really meet the needs that consumers are seeking. Retailers are also focused on this, and they recognize the need to transition to more sustainable packaging. Retailers like Walmart, Target, and Hannaford's have all set their own suites of packaging sustainability targets, particularly focused on their private label products. And these retailer own brand targets highlight the importance to retailers across the industry of rising to the occasion and really taking action on packaging. Packaging sustainability is also receiving attention at the regulatory level, and there are many state and national governments that are introducing and passing extended producer responsibility bills. EPR is a policy approach that holds producers financially and operational responsible for the entire life cycle of their products, including the recycling streams to manage packaging after use. A key aspect of these laws is that they incentivize the shift to packaging that is recyclable or more sustainable. And stakeholders see this EPR regulation as an essential tool that can help us address the global challenges that we have with recycling and single use plastic pollution. As of June, there are 7 US states that have passed EPR legislation, and more states are considering it. And so we really believe it's incumbent on us to respond to this growing demand and to these regulatory requirements for more sustainable packaging. And it also helps us as a business to mitigate future regulatory, financial, and climate risk. Next slide. We chose to get started with pouches because they're such an important part of our product
Oh,
portfolio.
Britt, I'm
Yes.
going to quickly talk through Stonyfield's packaging targets.
Oh,
Great.
sorry.
That's okay. You're eager to talk pouches, which I love. Um, so in addition to the external drivers that Britt was talking about, Stonyfield has also set a greenhouse gas reduction target, multiple, that it needs to meet, right? So behind first milk and then transportation and logistics, packaging is actually the third largest contributor to Stonyfield's greenhouse gas emissions. So with this being the case, tackling packaging sustainability is a huge piece of Stonyfield's climate strategy. To help achieve the greenhouse gas reduction targets that Britt just talked about, and as well as, to demonstrate a leadership in the packaging space, Stonyfield has set 4 packaging-related targets that it is working towards. The first is to reduce the carbon footprint of packaging by at least 15% by 2030 from a 2020 baseline. The next is lightweighting packaging components 10% across the same time period through, removing additional pieces that may not be necessary or reducing the weight of packages. Then to have a packaging portfolio that is either entirely bio-based or made from recyclable materials by 2030, and then continuing Stonyfield's commitment to keep toxic materials out of packaging. So to help determine how Stonyfield would achieve these targets and prioritize, different improvement opportunities, in 2021, Pure Strategies supported Stonyfield in developing its first packaging inventory. What this packaging inventory did was it examined all packaging used by Stonyfield for its products, categorized by different types of characteristics, things like what's the component type, what's the material type, what's the weight of the material and the component. What's the recyclability characteristics of this product? What's the greenhouse gas impact and many other factors as well? And so this helped us understand where key packaging hotspots existed against each of these different, target areas. And then also helped us think about what formats presented the most significant opportunities for improvements. We then developed a roadmap to help inform what it would take to achieve packaging targets based on what the packaging portfolio looked like at the time. Looking at things like, the impact of lightweighting and replacing materials and enhancing recyclability, among other topics as well. We also worked with Stonyfield to develop an internal guide for product and packaging teams to think about best practices. So, it was all of this exploratory work that helped Stonyfield determine that pouches were really a top opportunity area for packaging sustainability efforts.
Thanks, Ariella. So now on to pouches. As Ariella noted, pouches are an important part of Stonyfield's product portfolio, and the total pouch segment is outpacing the rest of the kids segment by about 10 percentage points. So this is a significant portion of our total brand volume and a really important product for us. Pouches are usually made from multiple materials, and this helps them make them more convenient, more lightweight, and more durable. So first generation pouches are composed of multiple layers of different plastics, and in some cases, a layer of aluminum. And as you can imagine, having this multi-material laminate presents a lot of recycling challenges due not only to the inherent difficulties of recycling plastic films, but also because the material recovery facilities, or MRFs, cannot separate these multi-material pouches into individual components. Post-consumer recycling content made from multiple materials does not have a likely recycling stream with a viable end market, and so this is a key challenge. Additionally, the aluminum layer in pouches generally has a higher carbon impact due to the upstream manufacturing of the aluminum. So we know that redesigning these pouches is going to be key for moving towards more sustainable packaging. Designing for recyclability involves assessing the pouch's base material, its color, its closure material, coatings, additives, inks, adhesives, shape, and size. And looking at all of this led us to an all polyethylene, or PE, lightweight pouch as a design that could achieve an immediate material source reduction and packaging greenhouse gas emissions reductions, while also supporting our efforts towards our longer term sustainable packaging goals. Next slide. And next slide. So we can really divide our work on pouches into these near and long-term ambitions. So near term, as I just described, our focus has been on reducing the materials that are embedded in the pouch, both in the layers of the pouch itself and in the amount of plastic that's contained in the pouch cap. We knew that shifting to a monolayer pouch material and lightweighting the cap would cost more than the way we've been making our pouches. And so to ease this transition, we turned to the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center for help. The DBIC is funded by the Farm Bill, and it was founded to support farmers and dairy processors with improving the viability and sustainability of the US dairy sector. In the Northeast, the DBIC has a processor innovation grant. And so we applied to that, and we were fortunate to receive $250,000 in assistance that would help us defray the added cost of both shifting to the monomaterial pouch and modifying our equipment to run lighter weight caps. So we were awarded this grant back in 2022, and that year we started work on our Yo Baby pouch line. So that's the start of this work for us. But in the longer term, we believe that this is just the first step towards supporting the future potential for recyclability of pouches. We know that the recycling industry has a ways to go in order for curbside recycling of flexible packaging to become a reality. But we also know that monomaterial pouches will be much easier for that recycling infrastructure to handle because those layers won't need to be separated once they're collected. Next slide.
Hello. So I'll take over from here. So we're proud to say that as part of this journey, as we started our journey in 2024 with the first launch of our Yo Baby pouches, utilizing the CheerPack's new Cheer Circle spouted all PE pouch. Now, at that time, by transitioning from the multi-layer laminate to the mono material of PE, we allowed us to lightweight by 11%. That resulted in obviously 7,000 pounds of plastic reduction. But more importantly, it also contributed to greenhouse emissions reduction, which is a main part of our inspiration for this process. So in order to further this, so there's many layers to packaging. And the next piece that we focused on was also incorporating the lightweighted cap, the Visi cap by CheerPack. The VisiCap actually meets multiple purposes for improvement. One being, as you can see, is it has an improved grip for a Yo Baby. That's an improved benefit. Additionally, it also has a better clarity to its safety ring, and more importantly, it also includes lightweighted from a plastic perspective. It's hard to believe, but a 0.4 gram reduction can result in over 44,000 pounds of plastic. That's millions of pouches that are being produced. Additionally, with the success of our lightweighting for our Yo Baby line, we were able to also expand this innovation to other pouches in our portfolio that then allowed us to increase our overall emissions reduction to 143 pounds of CO2. So for us, that was a significant benefit. So cap lightweighting started as a small portion and has continued to expand. So our overall total benefit being over 50,000 pounds of plastic is a huge benefit to our business, considering the small start of a 0.4 gram change. So small things can add up very quickly, and I think that's an important message. Next slide, please. As has been discussed, one of the things that we need to consider is that we are focusing on the potential future recycling. As currently designed, the pouches are not recyclable because of the definition of recyclability, and that includes the 4 categories that Britt mentioned earlier, which is you have to be able to collect it, you have to be able to sort it, you have to be able to process and clean it, and then you have to have an outlet related to that material, that recycled material. In order to, so therefore you have to meet all 4 of those definitions in order to be a recyclable packaging. So we are continuing to move forward with this new pouch, all PE pouch, understanding that our target is that future recycling capabilities and MRFs and the industry will progress such that this all PE pouch will be recyclable. The film itself, as part of our beginning of our journey, Amcor had obtained APR, so that is the Association of Plastic Recyclers, designed for recyclability recognition for their all PE film. But as noted, in order for the full pouch to be recyclable, that means that all components, cap, spout, and package, inks, all must be considered as part of the evaluation. And CheerPack is working on that with us to obtain APR design for recyclability recognition for the whole package. So this is part of our journey for long-term recyclable packaging. Next slide, please. So in order to engage in this process, it's important to recognize that we're a food manufacturer. We are not packaging subject matter experts. So it is really critical to rely on external sources to help support you to identify your roadmap and your path forward. So as Ariella identified earlier, Pure Strategies is part of that, facilitating and assisting in a roadmap related to our packaging strategy. Then from there, we're working with our suppliers, both from a roll stock, a cap perspective, what equipment can be utilized, and the partnership between the packaging and the equipment that we have in our facilities is absolutely critical to ensure that we are also researching innovation, renovation with our suppliers, because they are connected to what's happening in industry and being able to provide us with additional guidance, feedback, trends. So suppliers are really critical in this from a stakeholder perspective. Also, I would say early in our journey, we were leveraging also industry stakeholder groups such as the Association of Plastic Recyclers and Ameripen, both of which are constantly monitoring industry. They're bringing together all industry partners to share best practices, to identify what challenges there are in industry, and then to help put forward what might be the standards. So those two pieces were critical in the beginning of this journey. And internal, because then you need to, once you have an idea, it needs to be vetted. Does it support the brand? Does it support our business strategy? Does it support your distribution network? Depending on how you're managing your product portfolio. In addition, can it be implemented on your packaging lines and working with industrial manufacturing? And most importantly, does it support, or do you have leadership support? Because these endeavors are not, they're not quick. They're part of a longer path, and it's really critical that you have leadership support. Not to be forgotten is our consumers. We are out to make fantastic yogurt, but our consumers are also expecting us to be a leader in sustainability. And with that comes expectations to deliver more sustainable options for our consumers so that they can feel better about the products that they're buying. And retailers are also getting very engaged. As Britt identified earlier, she gave 3 examples of retailers that are very focused on providing solutions for sustainable packaging. But retailers also have a critical component in regards to they can be part of your solutions for recycling. They can put in recycling collection centers for particular types of packaging at their facilities, as they do with grocery store bags, for example. And so working with them to promote sustainable packaging, to promote brands that are doing that, to help educate consumers. They are also a critical part of that. So when you're embarking on a journey of sustainability, all of these stakeholders need to be considered. Next slide, please. So let's get into some of the technical challenges that we had. As we've indicated, this journey started in 2022, and here we are in 2025 giving a presentation. So I think it's clear to say that these journeys take time. With that, there are a lot of lessons that are learned through that process. And so we'll start with the film. For us, given that we are a food manufacturer, it is critical that the film is compatible with our product. So with that comes many, many trials of testing both our product in the packaging, making sure that there's no adverse effects to both product quality as well as shelf life of our products. So that is critical from a material perspective. As we then migrate, then we start looking at, does the material itself have any adverse impacts on our manufacturing? So with that, the all PE film is a slightly softer film. With that, in our manufacturing operations, we actually needed to make only a few changes, but you started to see that film might have had some challenges related to being picked up or to as it flows on conveyors. So you need to take a look at all the little minor components of the film and how it applies. Those were easy adjustments, mostly based on automation. Waste is always a concern for us. But in this particular case, the transition from one film to another really did not create any additional or supplemental waste that we needed to be concerned about. But one lesson that we did have was that the printing of our graphics on the film did have an impact. The first several printings of our graphics on the all PE pouch were not acceptable. They were blurry, the clarity was not good. So in partnership with AmeriCorps and CheerPack, we had to work on resetting some of the print quality attributes in order to ensure that we received a product that we could then utilize. So critical lessons there that don't come out in the beginning and take time to find. Next, as we transition into caps, the cap size is slightly different. Orientation is different. So because of the cap and using the VisiCap, we then discovered challenges related to how the caps move through our process. They were getting stuck. And then they were having other issues that then created problems with our operational efficiency. As anyone knows, running a facility, the last thing you want is a reduction in operational efficiency. So there was several iterations related to caps with our packaging supplier in order to optimize how this cap could be utilized on our line. So that is a critical attribute that we needed to consider. Manufacturing infrastructure then considers other aspects of how are we going to make this sustainable? We're still using multiple cap styles. So that means that you then need to be looking at your design of your cap and your equipment. Are you implementing something that is flexible and is adjustable, or are you implementing something that has change parts? So that was a critical lesson. From there, we took the modifications that we made and were able to then replicate it on a subsequent line that allowed us to ensure that day one, the lessons that we learned with the initial trials were then cascaded into our future progress and specifications. Dual sourcing. As a manufacturer, we need to ensure that we have the ability to share sourcing because of risk with our overall product supply. And as 2020 taught people anything, it was that you need to have dual sourcing. So with that, we are looking at making sure that cap designs and the modifications that we're making are adaptable for all of our equipment. And then future, as I've touched on with manufacturing infrastructure, is to continue to have future planning such that cap designs are going to continue to be adapted. We know that in Europe, the tether is an advancement that is starting to happen for recycling streams. So we need to be mindful that as we're looking at innovations now, the innovations of tomorrow are still yet to come. We've talked a little bit about recyclability already, and that is obviously a key lesson for us, is that even though we're making progress and moving forward with a PE, all PE pouch, that we still need to continue so that we get to a point that we actually have a full recyclable design. And then in general, there's always more costs than you anticipate. I think it's important to consider there's incremental costs related to both equipment, but then there's also incremental costs as it relates to packaging. When you're an innovator and you're using some of the newest innovation related to packaging, there isn't a large demand. With that lack of demand, there tends to be higher cost on some of the packaging components until demand catches up. But it's important to be a leader and to understand that. I think replication is also key. These technologies and utilizing your stakeholders means that this is something that can be replicated across multiple businesses. And the strategy related to how we've implemented this one particular application on our pouch can be then also applied to other packaging formats across your business. And then, as I mentioned about adaptability, is continuing to have the focus that things will change, and that as industry changes and as industry improvements come, that we have the ability to adapt such that we can improve recyclability across all of our portfolio. Next slide.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about future work and some of the resources that we have available. So we spoke about lightweighting and an all PE pouch design, but in addition to those, really key critical pieces, there are also other opportunities for Stonyfield and other consumer packaged goods brands to work towards improving packaging sustainability as it relates to pouches, but also as it relates to, the entire packaging portfolio. The key areas that we've identified at a really high level are, initiatives to promote potential future pouch recyclability, integrating other sustainability attributes, and then addressing other types of packaging. So when we think about promoting, potential future recyclability, that really helps support improved end-of-life outcomes for this packaging format. Opportunities that exist are, extending pouch improvements to all pouch SKUs. As Bridget mentioned, we've improved the pouches on at this point on some non-Yo Baby SKUs, but there are certainly opportunities to expand this work elsewhere. As we mentioned earlier, Stonyfield is engaged with CheerPack, which is working towards obtaining APR designed for recyclability recognition for these pouch packaging improvements to denote, technical recyclability, given the all PE pouch design and the fact that, this pouch was designed using these APR best practices. There's also opportunities, on a more large scale to support flexible packaging recycling infrastructure. As we mentioned, that's a key barrier to making pouches recyclable, regardless of how they're designed, right? Then, in terms of integrating other sustainability attributes, this can help support other Stonyfield sustainable packaging targets and also help prepare for extended producer responsibility regulation. So looking at things like exploring post-consumer recycled resin and bio-based resins where it makes sense to, um, thinking about reusable and refillable options, thinking about how that can play a part in all of this work, and then, considering material replacement as part of a more holistic packaging strategy. And, to be clear, each of these topics is not without their intense challenges, right? And many, many trade-offs, but it's important to think about these options as they relate to the packaging landscape at Stonyfield and really as a whole across the US and globally as well. And then another piece is also to address other types of packaging. So, as I mentioned earlier, Stonyfield has a list of key hotspots, right? Key packaging hotspots where there are really a lot of opportunities. And so assessing those and understanding the impacts of addressing those hotspots is really key to meeting targets and reducing the impact of Stonyfield's entire packaging portfolio. So to help others progress on their pouch sustainability journeys, Stonyfield developed two publicly available resources. The first is a case study that outlines Stonyfield's journey to improve pouch sustainability to date. This case study includes a lot of what we talked about today, but includes details related to the context for implementing this work, key challenges associated with pouches, the delineation of different phases of this work, description of the different stakeholders engaged, and many other details. The second resource is a how-to guide, and Melanie will include the links in the chat if she hasn't already, so you all can access these. But the second resource is a how-to guide, which is really a more tactical, step-by-step resource that outlines how consumer packaged goods brands can improve the sustainability of their pouch packaging. So this the guide really includes considerations and recommendations related to things like how to evaluate different improvement opportunities, how to design packaging for sustainability, shelf life, quality, and processability, thinking through testing packaging for functionality and quality, empowering your teams cross-functionally or specifically within the packaging function to support this work internally, how to track sustainability impacts once you do implement or if you're thinking about implementing this work, and many other topics as well. So we know that everyone is starting from a different point in their journey. So we wanted to provide our contact information here so you had the opportunity to reach out to us directly, obviously the Stonyfield team, to learn more specifically about their journey, and then Pure Strategies. If you want to consider how to think about pouch packaging sustainability as it relates to your holistic packaging strategy, we wanted to provide our information so you could reach out to us because I know the Stonyfield team reached out to other folks across their journey, and that was really helpful as part of the process towards pouch sustainability. So I wanted to leave that there. And so with that, I think we are ready to hop into a Q&A period. It looks like we have some great questions on deck. Let's see. So maybe the first question I see is related to EPR, and recyclability. So maybe we'll first touch on EPR, and then we can talk about the definition of recyclability and what recyclability means for this pouch. So as Britt mentioned earlier, extended producer responsibility regulations are a set of state level laws for packaging and paper products that assign producers meaning brands and manufacturers, the financial, operational, or both responsibility for the end of life of their products rather than the consumer. So EPR packaging laws include this element called eco-modulation, and that outlines the fees that a producer is required to pay based on the packaging that they produce. These fees can incentivize packaging design and material choices, things like that, that can help reduce environmental impact. Right now, there's a lot in flux, this year being the first year that many companies had to report against some states' EPR regulations. So there's a lot in flux in terms of like what are the exact fees associated with eco-modulation. So I don't want to totally speak to that at this moment, but we know that things like increasing recycled content and lightweighting packaging materials, improving recyclability are some of the factors that are being considered for eco-modulation in some states. A quick example that I want to talk about is Oregon is considering as part of its eco-modulation program, Oregon is considering benefits to producers that disclose a package's life cycle environmental impacts and also that reduce those life cycle impacts as well. So that's just an example of some things that are in the mix for EPR regulations. In terms of recyclability, as Bridget mentioned, the pouch is not technically recyclable, or it's not recyclable curbside in its current state, right? There are still many barriers that exist to making it curbside recyclable. There are many definitions of what recyclable means, but for example, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, which is a key definition that many use, is the FTC says a package is recyclable when it can be collected, separated, or otherwise recovered from a waste stream through an established recycling program for reuse or use in manufacturing or assembling another item, provided that recycling facilities are available for at least 60% of consumers or communities where that item is sold, right? So that's one example of a definition. Different states, as someone has mentioned here, have their own definitions of recyclability. So, by that definition, the pouch is not yet recyclable. However, the redesign and making an all polyethylene design really aims for potential future acceptance in recycling streams. So, while it's not currently recyclable, the design has been updated such that when future recycling systems become available, an all polyethylene pouch has better end market viability because it is all one material. That's a high level response to that. Can you tell me if the new structure compromised shelf life? Bridget, I wonder if that's a question for you.
Yeah, no, I can answer that question. No, the new materials were compatible with our current shelf life. Again, we did extended studies to ensure that shelf life was, because it is critical. We live in the United States, and shelf life, when you're distributing across a country as large as ours, we need to ensure that our product is stable and that it is consistent. So there was no change when changing from the multi-laminate to a single mono material.
Excellent. We're getting a question. This is an interesting question. Did you see any impact, either positive or negative, on product sales or on net promoter scores with customers from the new pouch packaging design?
Good question. I think I can't give the exact answers because I'm not in sales, but I can tell you that the growth format related to pouches has been strong. As Britt indicated earlier, from the kids category, it's growing at a 10% rate higher than the other pack groups. And I think that we know from our studies that our primary consumer, actually purchaser, so we'll say mom, is very concerned about the materials that they are exposing their families to, and very considerate towards sustainability. So for us, it is a critical aspect to ensure that element.
Great. Somebody wants to know about your strategy for engaging key internal stakeholders. So, can you speak a little bit to engaging management and C-suite and potentially others within the company as well?
Sure. So leadership is always critical, right, to any of these endeavors. And I think it's important that both Stonyfield, as Britt identified, does have SBTI targets. So does our parent company, Lactalis. So with that, by having a critical governance that indicates that these are the targets that we are trying to achieve, it helps us then establish the consistency and the drive to create a packaging roadmap that gave us the opportunity to identify pouches in particular. Once we matched both the fact that Stonyfield is a mission-driven company, we have a packaging roadmap, and then that leadership is also committed to sustainability and understanding that we were able to present a path forward to leadership that showed how we were able to tie all of these elements together. And with that, our management, along with marketing and the brand, believed that it was critical to tie pouches with that key growth to an area to focus on this opportunity for work.
Great. Bridget, I'm wondering if you can speak to engaging others within the organization as well, in addition to management and leadership.
Yeah, I mean, engagement of others is challenging, right? So it starts with education. It's critical to make sure that you spend time to explain the why of what you're doing. You need to be able to educate both the managers, the leadership, as well as those people on the plant floor that are going to be impacted by the changes that you're recommending, and then help educate them. This is why we're doing it. Help me help you kind of situation to improve what you're experiencing. So the criticality of trials is really important. But with that comes challenges. As we all know, we're trying to produce. We want to ensure that we're not impacting our capacity and our ability to meet the consumer demands and the volumes. But it does require us to build in time such that we can execute trials, so that way we can explore and solve problems that we are actually potentially creating when it comes to operational efficiencies. So it really requires a partnership, and the only way to do that is to communicate, to go on the floor, to work together. And I would say that includes bringing in your suppliers and having them also participate on the floor, try to brainstorm to some of the challenges and work towards those new solutions.
Great, thank you. The next question is related to the technology and the packaging materials. So, are you aware of whether or not this technology is open sourced, and will Amcor share the tech with other manufacturers?
Unfortunately, I don't have that information.
Hmm.
Well, Bridget, I think we can say that at this point there are multiple packaging suppliers that do offer a monolayer PE pouch format, and there are other refrigerated pouches in the market that have started using, at least one other that has started using this monolayer pouch. So I'm not sure that any of these packaging suppliers would actually open source their production methods, but I think it's becoming more widely available for processors who are looking for this format.
Great. We have some questions about shipping and tariffs on decision making. So, we have some questions related to the manufacture of the pouches, and where they're located and how have they been responding to this. But I'm also curious about the impact and the thinking that Stonyfield is doing with respect to shipping and tariffs.
Good question. So, as it comes to tariffs, obviously, all businesses are concerned and are monitoring, as it is a very dynamic time in our country as it relates to tariffs and to packaging formats, et cetera. I think it definitely is influencing procurement strategies from a larger scale in regards to making sure you understand what percentage of your portfolio is internal to the US versus external. But a lot of these partnerships are long-term partnerships, they're international agreements. And so it's not something that changes overnight. And so we've maintained our current strategy. But I think, as with most, people will be looking at, are there internal US based sources for your materials, but at the same time, does it have the same quality? Does it meet the same requirements, et cetera? So it's a very complicated question to answer simply. And I think it's unique to every company, depending on the type of materials that we're talking about.
Thanks, Bridget. The next question is related to greenhouse gas reductions. And so the question is related to where the greenhouse gas reductions are coming from, and talking about the greenhouse gas reductions associated with shipping and logistics. Maybe I can start speaking to this, and then Bridget or Britt, you can speak to this a little bit. So right now, the greenhouse gas reductions are coming from simply using less material, right? So if you use less plastic, that means you produce less plastic, right? In your final product. So that's really where Stonyfield is currently claiming the greenhouse gas reductions, which is a really straightforward thing to account for. What is a little bit trickier is trying to quantify the shipping greenhouse gas reductions associated with that reduced weight, right? As Bridget mentioned, the pouch reduction is what, 0.4 grams, I believe you mentioned.
For the lid, the cap.
For the cap,
Mhm.
exactly, for the cap, which is, quite small on its own, but compounded over the many, many, many pouches that Stonyfield produces, create a huge impact. What is a little challenging about quantifying the impact of logistics is logistics is all calculated together, right? So you're shipping quarts with pouches, with small cups. And so it's really challenging to separate the gains just associated with the pouches when the logistics and transportation system is optimizing to reduce the total number of stops, right? To make sure those truckloads are as full as possible. So it's really hard to parse just the pouch piece out, but it is something that we are actively thinking about, and something that we are also curious to quantify just for the pouches.
And I would add that, as we discussed, that this is part of our journey. As we lightweight caps, that means that those caps are smaller, which means that they take less room in a 4-pack or whatever size format that we're doing. And then we can look at reductions related to our corrugate, et cetera. So as part of a journey, it's a very small piece. And, as Ariel indicated, it is critical for us to quantify. And so from a simple perspective, we focused on the plastic and the lightweighting. It's very factual and it doesn't require a lot of subjectivity. So that was our decision at this time. It may be a bit conservative, but it is something that we feel very strongly about.
Great. Coming back to the point that this pouch is not yet recyclable, right? And Stonyfield can't, even though Stonyfield has done all this work in this redesign, yes, from a lightweighting perspective, but also to create an all PE pouch, what are wins and or claims that Stonyfield is thinking through to help celebrate this good work that's happening that we know is supporting potential future recyclability?
Our wins go ahead, Britt.
Well, as you're saying, we really can't claim recyclability, so it's limited in terms of what we can call a win here. This is really about planning for the future and setting the stage for the world that we want to be in years down the road. So for now, we're just continuing to do the work and looking to other packaging formats next for making further improvements. And in the future, we hope someday we can put a recyclable label on this product.
Yeah. Right. And if I could add, it's having conversations like these and adding a lot of context behind this work, and not just simply making a blanket claim and providing the details and background as to why decisions were made. I think it can be challenging to communicate these things sometimes, but from my experience working with you all, it's very important to the Stonyfield team to get that communication piece right.
Absolutely.
Let's see what else we have. Engagement with retailers. How have you been engaging with retailers on maybe this or other types of packaging sustainability efforts to date? Or, if maybe there haven't been direct engagements, what are some thoughts you have about that?
Do you want to talk, Britt, or?
Sure, I can
Okay.
share that we do make sure that our sales team has the information about the work that we've done on our pouches so that when they're meeting with retailers, they can talk about this. We are also participating in some larger packaging working groups that retailers also participate in so that we can learn from each other and share information along the way. So we're looking to elevate this work. It kind of ties back to the previous question, right? Like we want to be having a conversation about what we are doing with pouches, even though they're not yet to this fully recyclable phase.
Great. Something maybe I want to hear a little bit more about are what are some of the challenges you continue to encounter in this space?
Good question. I think we will continue to have challenges in packaging recyclability. As we've indicated, we are waiting for industry and technology to mature or advance enough that allows us to have this full recyclable vision that we have with potential recyclability. So that's a key, but I think it's a whole industry issue. I think that recycled content is how are we equipping processors with the tools and the technology to process and sort? The expanding of curbside recycling across the entire industry in the US is hindering a big piece of this aspect. And as recycling programs are changed and governed town to town, it continues to be an item that then becomes a much bigger picture that we need to work through. The challenges, as we've indicated, you know, in working with APR recognition is how do we make it compatible? What additional modifications do we need to make in order to be compliant with APR's recyclability recognition platform? So to me, those are big pieces. We're making strategies, but continuing to get that success is, I would say, our primary challenge.
Great. Thank you so much, Bridget. So it looks like that is really all the time we have for today. We hope that you enjoyed our session on Stonyfield sustainable packaging work. Thank you all for your time and attention. A special thank you to Britt and Bridget for your time and your insights and your openness. If you didn't get the opportunity to ask your question today and would like to learn more about Stonyfield's work or how to get started on your packaging journey, please feel free to reach out to Bridget, Britt, or myself. And with that, hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you all so much. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.